The broken chain, the stars above the outpost were cold and endless. Black space stretched in all directions like an ocean with no bottom. Patrol ships moved silently between blinking defense satellites. On the edge of it all floated Outpost Redline, a human military station built from steel and purpose. It was not beautiful. It was not meant to be. It was strong inside the outpost. Commander Holly stood by the observation window. His arms were crossed and his eyes were sharp. He was a man known for discipline and duty. The kind of man who had seen peace break and chaos rise more times than he could count. He did not smile often, and he did not need a soft beep from his datapad signaled that the prisoner had arrived. Holly turned and walked to the holding bay. 2 guards followed him silently. They did not speak. There was no needing. The center of the holding room sat a young alien girl. Her skin was a pale blue shade with glowing lines running from her temples to her neck. Her hair was silver and her eyes were a deep violet that seemed to hold fire. She wore a torn Aurelian cadet uniform, but the badge had been removed. Her hands were bound and her face was calm but guarded. Her name was Elyria. Commander Hall entered the room and stood in front of her. He did not speak at first. He just watched her. She raised her chin and looked back without fear. You were supposed to fire on the convoy. He said they had children. She answered quickly. That was not your call, he replied. There was a long pause. The guards looked at each other but stayed silent. Your own fleet turned you in, Holly continued. They sent you here. You are lucky. They wanted you executed. Elyria did not flinch. Let them think what they want. I did what was right. Hale stepped forward. In the Dominion we do not reward disobedience. You are not being punished for showing mercy. You are being held because you broke the chain of command. That cannot happen in war. Not on a side. Elyria looked away. Then maybe your side is not as different as mine. He gave a short breath through his nose. Maybe not. But here you will learn why discipline matters more than kindness when everything burns. With that, he motioned to the guards. Put her in the cold cell. Elyria was led down a steel hallway with no windows. The cold cell was not a torture chamber. It was a room with no warmth, no comfort, and no sound. The lights were dim. The bed was a slab. The food came through a slot in the wall twice a day. There were no voices, no conversations. Only silence for the first 2 days. Elyria said nothing. She sat. She ate. She waited. On the 3rd day, Commander Holly came back. He placed a metal chair across from her and sat down. Do you know why I brought you here instead of letting them take you back? He asked. You want to show me that humans are better, she said without blinking. Wrong, he replied. I brought you here because I've seen cadets like you before. Young warriors who think loyalty and justice are always the same. They are not. I want you to understand what happens when you choose one and betray the other. Elyria narrowed her eyes. I chose not to kill children. If that makes me a traitor, then maybe I am not the one who needs to learn. He nodded slowly. Then learn the hard way. You'll be in training starting tomorrow. No comfort, no soft lessons. You will run with my soldiers. You will eat what they eat. You will face what they face. Every failure is a step closer to being sent back to your people in a box. Do you understand? I do, she said quietly. The next morning began at 4. The alarm rang through the barracks and the lights snapped on. Elyria was pushed into the training yard where human soldiers were already lined up. She was the only non-human in the field. Eyes followed her. Some curious, some cold. Run, barked the drill sergeant. She ran, climb. She climbed, fall. She hit the ground more times than she could count. Her muscles screamed and her lungs begged for air. But she kept going. At night, she was not taken to a warm room. She slept in a barrack corner with one blanket and no words from the others. When she missed a target on the range, she lost her food for that night. When she spoke back to the sergeant, she ran 10 extra laps in full gear. But the strangest part was this: no one ever hit her. No one screamed in her face like she had expected. No one treated her like garbage. They just let the rules punish her. The system was hard but not cruel. After a week, Halle called her in again. "You're still standing." "Impressive," he said. "Is that your goal?" she asked. "Break me until I follow orders without thinking." "No," he said. "My goal is to make sure that if you ever defy an order again, you know exactly what it costs. To you. To your squad. To everyone." Lyra stared at him. "What if the order is wrong? Then you obey and deal with it later. You're not a god. You're a soldier. And soldiers bleed, so others don't have to." She left without replying. That night she sat on her bunk and looked at her hands. They were blistered. Her arms were bruised. Her pride was cracked. But deep inside something else had started to form. Not Fernet hate, something else, something like understanding. This was not how her people trained. They drilled obedience with fear and silence. The humans taught it through struggle and clarity. They didn't need to make her feel weak. They made her feel responsible, and in that cold, heavy feeling of responsibility, Lyra knew she was not broken. She was being forged. Discipline begins where mercy ends. The morning came with no light from the sky. Only the harsh sound of the alarm shook the air inside the barracks. Lyra woke before it rang. Her body had started to adjust to the rhythm of this place. The training, the pain, the silence. But her mind was still sharp. Each morning began with drills. No one explained the purpose. No one cheered. The rules were clear. You follow or you fall. Lyra ran with the others. Her boots hit the ground in sync with human soldiers twice her size. Sweat ran down her back as she climbed the rope wall again. Her hands trembled, but she never stopped. Pain was a companion now. The humans called it the gauntlet. A course made to test endurance and obedience at the same time. She hated it at first. Not because it hurt, but because no one cared if she failed. They only recorded it. She was not a guest. She was not a prisoner. Either. She was something between. One evening, as she dragged herself to the mess hall, she noticed something strange. The human soldiers had started to nod at her, not warmly. Not with friendship, but with respect. Quiet respect. The kind only earned through blood and dirt. Inside the hall, she sat alone. Her tray had rice and protein cubes, nothing tasty, nothing wasted. She ate in silence. Around her were soldiers who had watched her train. Some had bet on how long she would last. None had spoken to her, yet Commander Halle entered the room. The soldiers straightened their backs. The noise dropped. He walked over to Lyra and placed a data pad on her table. "Tomorrow, your tasks change," he said. "What kind of tasks?" she asked without lifting her head. "Field test," he answered. "You will take orders from Sergeant Voss. You will not argue. You will not delay. Fail him and I pull you from training." "Why now?" she asked. "Because you are still here," he said, and walked away. The next day, the dropship roared to life. Lyra sat beside 3 human troopers in black armor. She wore a lighter suit with reinforced plates. No weapon yet. Only orders. Sergeant Voss stood at the front. His voice was like gravel and steel. "We land on a dead moon. Old Aurelian base. You run recon. Watch your corners. Move on command. No questions." Lyra listened. The ship landed. Dust rose around them. The air was thin. The base ahead looked abandoned. Broken walls, burned metal. A place left to rust. Voss raised a hand. "Move out." They moved in silence. Lyra followed close. She scanned the dark corners. Her mind worked fast. The layout was familiar. She had trained in places like this during her early years in the Concords. Suddenly the ground shook. A blast rocked the outer wall. Lyra dropped to the floor. The humans moved like water. Quick. Controlled enemy drones swarmed from the shadows. Old Aurelian defense bots still active. Their red eyes blinked with hate. "Take cover," shouted Voss. Lyra rolled behind a crate. A soldier tossed her a sidearm. "Use it or die," he said. She gripped the weapon and fired. Her hands shook, but her aim was true. One drone fell. then another. Sparks filled the air. Her heart pounded, but her focus stayed clear. When the battle ended, the room was silent again. Smoke drifted through the broken wall. The bodies of drones lay scattered like twisted bones. Vuz looked at her and nodded once. You did not freeze. Good, she nodded back. I followed orders later on the dropship ride. Back no one spoke, but no one ignored her either. That silence meant something different now. Back at the base, Halle was waiting. You followed protocol. You used the tools given. You stayed alive. That is what we expect. She looked at him. I am not your soldier, not yet, he replied. But you are not who you were either. That night Lyra sat alone again. Her hands were steady, her breath even. The air in the barracks felt less heavy now, but something still burned inside her. She walked to the command terminal and requested a private audience with Commander Hale. An hour later, they met in his office. I want to know something, she said. Ask. He replied, why do you not punish me the way my people do? Why do you not strike me? Why do you not scream? Why do you let the system punish me? Hale leaned forward. Because pain fades, scars heal. But when a soldier learns the weight of their choices, that lesson stays forever. Discipline is not about fear, it is about trust. I cannot trust a soldier who only follows orders out of terror. Lyra listened in silence. You said I should not have chosen mercy, he said. I never said that. I said it was not your call. And that difference matters more than you think. She looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded once and left. That night in her bunk, she stared at the ceiling. Discipline was a word she had heard before. But here it meant something different. Not chains, not obedience to power, but a kind of structure that allowed people to survive and protect each other. She was starting to understand what made humans so feared in the galaxy. Not their weapons, not their ships, but their will, their ability to bend and never break, to suffer without losing direction, to enforce order not with anger, but with purpose. For the first time since her capture, Lyra did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like she was being rebuilt. She did not know what she would become in the end, but she knew it would not be the same cadet who had refused an order and lost everything. She was no longer standing against the humans. She was walking into their fire and learning to survive it. The breaking point. The morning drills came again without warning. Lyra ran with the others across the muddy field as the cold wind cut against her face. Her armor was soaked and heavy. Her legs burned with each step, but she did not slow down. She no longer felt like an outsider in the crowd. She was not one of them yet, but they had stopped looking at her like a stranger. Commander Halle watched from the command platform above the field. His eyes followed Lyra through every drill. She had not broken a rule in days. She followed orders without delay. She moved with purpose. The other soldiers respected her now, though none had spoken more than a few words. Respect came in silence hereafter. Training. Lyra returned to the barracks and cleaned her gear. She ate quickly and left without speaking. There was no laughter in her voice, no warmth in her steps. She was calm and sharp, like a blade being shaped by fire. That night Halle called her to the central briefing room. It was dark inside, except for one large screen showing a frozen image of a ship, a civilian freighter. Burned and drifting. Lyra stood still as Halle spoke. This is the convoy you refused to attack. Her heart slowed. Her eyes locked onto the image. After you let them go, they were intercepted by another Aurelian squad 3 days later. Most of the civilians escaped, but the ship took heavy fire. Several lives were lost. Lyra lowered her head. You were right, Halle said. They carried children and unarmed travelers. You were also wrong, because your action delayed their rescue and gave the enemy time to track them. She looked up. I tried to protect them, and you did, Halle replied. But your mercy came without plan, without warning, without coordination. It broke formation. It risked the mission. Lyra stayed silent. Hale stepped closer. This is why discipline matters. Not because feelings are weak, but because one mistake in war spreads like fire. Lyra clenched her fists. I did not think anyone would listen if I questioned the order. You are right, he said. They would not. That is why you do not question in battle. You lead or you follow. You do not pause. Not when lives are on the line. Lyra stepped back from the screen. Her breath was heavy now. Her thoughts twisted inside her chest. Guilt mixed with anger. Sadness fought against pride. Then teach me, she said. Teach me to lead. Hale looked at her for a long time before speaking again. Tomorrow you will lead a field team. 4 soldiers, real scenario, no fake drills. One mistake and people get hurt. Do you still want to lead? Yes, she answered. The next day began with sharp orders and cold steel. Lyra stood at the head of a team she had trained beside for weeks. The mission was simple. Retrieve a stolen data core from a rogue Aurelian outpost deep in an ice cave system. Minimal resistance expected. But nothing in war ever stayed simple for long. The dropship landed near the icy ridge. Snow covered the path. Wind howled through the cave entrance. Lyra signaled her team forward. Her voice was steady. Her hand signs were clear inside the cave. The silence was sharp. The walls were smooth and wet. Their boots crunched on the frozen ground. The signal from the data core pulsed softly on her visor. She moved ahead slowly. The team followed. Their lights cut through the shadows. Suddenly, a shape moved ahead. Not 1 but 3 figures. Lyra raised her hand to stop the team. Enemy drone scanned the cave. They were armed. Not part of the plan. Lyra opened her. Come, stay back, she whispered. I will draw them left. Hit from the right. Copy, came the reply. She moved forward and made noise. The drones turned and fired. Ice shattered beside her as she ducked and rolled. The team moved in fast. Clean shots. 1 drone down, then another. The 3rd exploded near the wall, and fire spread across the frozen floor. Lyra reached the core and pulled it free. Time to leave, she said, but the fire had weakened the cave walls. A loud crack echoed through the space. Ice began to fall. Move, she shouted. They ran through the tunnel. The ground shook. A soldier slipped and hit the wall. Lyra turned back and grabbed his arm. Come on. The ceiling dropped behind them as they barely escaped into the open air. The cold wind hit their faces like knives, but they were alive back on the ship. The team sat in silence. Lyra handed the data core to the pilot. Her body was bruised. Her arm bled slightly. But she smiled for the first time in the debriefing room. Commander Haile stood by the table. Report, he said. Mission complete, she replied. Minor injuries, no deaths. Core recovered. You disobeyed your initial extraction path. Haile said. It was blocked. I chose another based on live data. You led your team into a collapsing cave, and I brought them out. He nodded slowly. You broke 2 protocols and saved 4 lives. Lyra stayed silent. You understand now, he said. Discipline is not the enemy of reason. It is its foundation. You can lead, but you carry every choice like a weight. And that weight never leaves you. Lyra lowered her head. I understand. Then your training is not over. It is just beginning. That night, Lyra sat on the edge of her bunk. She looked at her hands. They were no longer soft. Her knuckles were bruised. Her palms were rough, but they no longer shook. She had found something deeper than strengths, had found purpose, and purpose was harder than metal. It did not break under fire. It did not fade in silence. It only grew stronger. She was no longer just a cadet who had disobeyed an order. She was a soldier who had learned why it mattered. Raged in fire. The stars above the outpost glowed brighter than before, but inside the base, a storm was growing. Commander Haile stood in the control room with his hands behind his back. His face was calm, but his eyes showed concern. Red alerts flashed across the main screen. Aurelian ships had entered Dominion space without warning. This was not a patrol. This was not a drill. They are here for her, he said. The officer beside him nodded. 3 warships, 2 transports. They want the girl. Hale stayed silent for a moment. Then he gave the order: prepare for combat. Lock down the base. Wake everyone in the lower halls. Lyra was sharpening her blade. It was not part of standard gear, but she had earned the right to carry it. Her mind was clear and her body stronger than it had ever been. Every scar was now a mark of progress, not pain. The sirens echoed through the halls. Red lights flashed overhead. Soldiers moved fast. Weapons were loaded. Orders were shouted. Lyra stood and listened as soldier ran by and stopped. When he saw her Elyrian ships inbound, "They are coming for you," she did not ask why. She already knew. She walked to the command center without waiting for an escort. Doors opened in front of her. No one tried to stop her now. Commander Holly turned as she entered. "They are here to take you back." Their message was clear. "They want the traitor returned, or they will burn this outpost to ash." Lyra looked at the screen showing the incoming fleet. Her people had not sent a small team. They had sent enough firepower to crush a city. "You will give me to them," she said. "No, I will not," Holly replied. "But I cannot stop them without a fight." "Then let me fight," she said. "You are not Dominion," he answered. "No, but I am not theirs either." Hale studied her face. "You will be seen as one of us if you fight beside us. There is no turning back after that." "I am not going back," Lyra said. "They taught me to obey without thinking. You taught me to think and still obey. That is the difference." Hale gave a short nod. "Gear up. You are on defense team 2. Outside the base, the sky turned dark. The Aurelian ships hovered above like beasts waiting to strike. Then the first blast came. A wave of fire rained down on the outpost. Shields, turrets opened fire. Drones flew up to meet the enemy. The ground shook inside the base. Soldiers moved into positions. Lyra stood with her squad near the eastern gate. The blast doors were locked, but sensors showed enemy life forms moving toward them on foot. Drop troops. Lyra tightened her grip on her weapon. Her heart beat steady. No fear now. Only focus. The doors opened and smoke poured in. Laser fire lit the hallway. Her squad returned fire. One soldier fell beside her, but the others pushed forward. Lyra moved fast. Her blade struck through an enemy drone. Her eyes scanned the field. Her training took over. She gave orders. Cover left, push center. Secure the generator room. They moved like a unit. No hesitation. No confusion. Suddenly a large blast threw her into the wall. Her vision blurred. Blood dripped from her forehead. She forced herself to stand through the smoke. She saw Holly fighting at the North Hall. 2 enemy soldiers cornered him. One raised a weapon. Lyra ran without thinking. She jumped between them and knocked the enemy down. The second attacker turned toward her, but she struck first. Hale leaned on the wall, breathing hard. "You disobeyed an order again," he said. She smiled through the pain. "You would have done the same." He did not argue. The battle lasted for hours. The outpost held the line. The enemy pulled back. The Aurelian fleet retreated. When their ground team failed in the command center, cheers rose, but no one celebrated long. The price had been high. Lyra walked through the medical bay, helping where she could. Her armor was damaged and her skin burned, but she did not rest. Not yet. Later, Holly called her to the top deck. The stars were quiet again. The sky was clean. Number. More enemy signals. "You saved my life," he said. "You saved mine first," she replied. "The Dominion has reviewed your actions. They offer you asylum and a role in their recon force. It is not a full commission, but it is a place to begin." She looked at the stars. The same stars she had once seen from the other side of the Wari, except then. "Welcome to the Dominion," he said. She turned to leave but paused. "They will keep hunting me," she said. "Let them try," he replied. "You are not easy to break." She walked away with a steady step. In the training yard, a few soldiers watched her pass. One nodded. Another offered her water. Small signs. Quiet signs. She was no longer the enemy. She was one of them, not because she was accepted, but because she had earned her place through fire and grit. She had chosen her path with full knowledge of the cost. She had seen both sides and made her choice not with hate, not with pride, but with purpose. She was no longer the cadet who had spared a convoy out of blind mercy. She was a warrior who understood that mercy without structure leads to chaos, and that discipline without thought leads to ruin. She had found the space in between, and she had made it her home, when orders mean nothing and honor means everything. Outpost looked quiet under the pale light of the moons. Wind moved across the steel platforms, and the cold air touched everything with silence. But inside the base, something had changed. Soldiers walked with heavier steps. Repairs had begun on the broken walls. Burnt metal was cleared away, and blackened flags were replaced in the command hall. Commander Holly stood over a digital map. His eyes followed a red signal blinking near the border. He already knew what it meant. Another threat was rising. This one was smaller but faster. A rogue Aurelian strike force had crossed into Dominion space with one purpose: not conquest, not control, just revenge. They are coming for her. Holly said. The officer beside him nodded. They will not stop this time. They have no diplomats on board. Only weapons. Let them come, Holly replied. She will face them herself outside the control room. Lyra trained in the yard. Her blade cut through the air with sharp motion. Her hands moved fast and her breath stayed steady. She no longer needed instruction. She had shaped herself through fire and choice. Commander Holly approached and watched her in silence. When she stopped, he stepped forward. We received a signal. Aurelian strike team. No backup, no message. Just movement. She wiped her forehead and looked up. Then they are here to finish what they started. They know you fight for us now. They will not accept that. She nodded slowly. Then I will show them what it means to choose your own path. The outpost was placed on alert once more. Soldiers gathered weapons and prepared defense points. Turrets locked onto distant skies. Lyra stood beside her. New squad. These were not the same men and women who once watched her with cold eyes. They were now brothers and sisters forged in battle. She was no longer questioned. She was trusted. The Aurelian strike ship landed without warning near a rocky hill just beyond the defense field. A small team of elite warriors moved forward. Their armor was dark and their weapons silent. They knew this base. They had studied its weak points. But they did not expect what came next. Lyra stepped forward alone. She walked beyond the gates and faced them under the open sky. The Aurelian commander stepped out from the group. His face was marked with lines of rank and history. His eyes burned with shame and pride. You were one of us, he said. You wore our badge. You trained beside me and you left that behind. For them, Lyra looked at him with no fear. I left behind fear and silence. I found honor where you only saw control. You broke the code. He said, you spared enemies. You helped traitors. You served those we were meant to destroy. I followed what was right, she said. Not what I was told. The commander raised his hand. You stand in our way. I will give you one chance. Lay down your arms and return with us. Lyra stood still. Her voice was clear. No, very well, he replied. The strike team rushed forward. Lyra moved first. She was faster than before, stronger. She knew their style. She had trained with them for years. Now she turned that knowledge against them. She fought with no hesitation. Her blade struck true. Her feet stayed light. Her eyes watched every move, but there were too many. Suddenly a blast knocked her back. She hit the ground hard. Pain rose through her side. Blood stained her armor. Then she heard the voice. Hold the line. It was Commander Haley, charged forward with a squad of Dominion soldiers. They opened fire. The battle became chaos. Steel clashed with steel. Fire lit the sky. Lyra stood again. She joined the fight. Her blade moved like wind. She fought beside humans now. Not because she had to. Because she chose to. Hale fell to one knee. An Aurelian blade had cut through his armor. Lyra saw him and moved fast. She reached him and blocked another strike. She stood over him and faced the last attacker. The Aurelian commander stepped forward again. His weapon aimed at her heart. You had a chance, he said. You could have returned. I already did, she said. I returned to myself. She struck first. The blade cut through the air and disarmed him. He fell to the ground. His eyes filled with disbelief. You fight like us, he whispered. No, she said. I fight better. The Aurelian team was defeated. Some escaped, some surrendered. The rest were gone. The battle was over. Later in the medical bay, Lyra sat beside Holly as medics treated his wounds. Disobeyed a direct order again, he said with a tired smile. She laughed softly. And saved your life again, he nodded. Maybe I should stop giving you orders. Maybe you should trust me more, she said. I do now. A few days passed. The outpost returned to normal. Repairs continued. New recruits arrived. But something had changed. Forever, Lyra was no longer the girl who defied orders. She was now the soldier others looked up to. She wore no rank. She carried no medals. But her story was known by all. A story of defiance, a story of discipline, a story of finding your place not through orders but through honor. One morning, she stood on the training field with a new squad. Fresh faces, nervous hands, uncertain steps. She spoke to them clearly. You will be broken here. You will be shaped here. But in the end, you will understand why discipline saves lives. One recruit raised a hand. Are you really the one who fought your own people? Yes. Why did you do it? Because I chose to be better than what I was given, and in that choice I became free. The end.